Good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
I love watching that intro, don't you?
Yeah, I'll tell you what made me laugh. The one where you got Murphy behind you and you're making the face. Murphy the Bigfoot. It's absolutely brilliant. Hello, Jamie. How are you, buddy?
Jamie is our mod. Is our moderator for tonight. So he will be modding everybody in the chat. I need to get this shared out, but in the meantime, Dan, I've got to wish David Greenway a very, very happy birthday. It's his birthday, so
Happy birthday, David.
Send him a shout out and hope his dog's okay. The dog with the vest. Do you remember the dog with the vest?
Oh, David. Oh, I know.
David.
David. Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, mate. I hope you're having a good one. Glad to hear that, Jamie.
And I want to give a great big shout out to, I've been going on about this today and I'm still blown away by it, but a big shout out to Adamant as well. Thank you. And I will be in touch. So big shout out to him too. What have you been up to, Dan?
My eyes are dry. Sorry. Yeah, nothing. Why, William? Absolutely nothing, really. Bit of decorating, as you can see. I'm trying to hold the laptop in a way that kind of it sort of takes the step ladder and that out the back. Where I've been, when Hazel's been up it painting, and I've been doing the low, and she's been doing the high. So yeah, but apart from that, no, not a lot really. I've been pretty chilled today.
You've been pretty chilled.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being a bit chilled.
No, and you've had a really exciting day, haven't you? So that's cool.
I have. I've been a mess today. Ever since that happened, I have just been an absolute heap.
Oh, I'm surprised. It's an amazing thing. It's an absolutely phenomenal thing. You know, it's part of our youth, isn't it? Really, big part of our youth. When you think about it,
I'm still young now. What are you talking about?
Well, that's true. That's true. I'm the old fogey, you know. I'm the next in line to be put. Well, if it was still going, I'd be the next in line for last of the summer wine.
Do you want to tell everyone who we've got on tonight?
We have got a lovely lady on tonight from across the pond. She's called Varla Ventura. I've actually got to get her in a minute. She's very well versed in all things cryptid and also the subject that we're going to get her on tonight. We were hoping to get her to talk about tonight will be the Fae, will be the fairy realm.
Yes,
because she's very, you know, that's a real favourite of mine, the fairy realm, as you know, Viv.
Yeah,
and I do love it. I'm a bit obsessed with it, really, and I have been for many
years. We haven't got enough people talking about that at the moment.
No,
so it's nice to sort of hear what she's got to say about the Fae, because I find that absolutely fascinating.
Yes, exactly. I agree. It's not one of those subjects that's broached very often or enough. It needs to be brought more into, you know, this kind under the umbrella. It is under the umbrella, but it needs to be out aired a lot more. So so she's going to be coming in tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. I've just linked her now. So so she'll be coming in tonight and talking about, you know, I guess experiences and her perceptions and her beliefs and just different parts of the Fae. Really, I've listened to a couple of podcasts with her, and she's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
you know, very interesting lady, very articulate, erudite, just good, just great. So yeah,
can put your questions
in shortly.
Everyone can put their questions to Varla in the chat. So please, if you could do that, we would be very grateful, and we'll get them to Varla as soon as she comes on. If you would like, you could give us a share out. We'd like that very much.
That would be great. Oh, William says they talked about the Fae at dinner last night. Yeah, they're an interesting subject, William. Very interesting. And I'm going to let. Hello, Chantel. How are you?
Hello, my daughter. She's moving in with me.
Is she moving in with you? Is she?
Yeah, because I've got a spare bedroom, haven't I? So
there you go then.
She wants to move. She wants to move to the UK. So
there you go. That'd be good. She can come and join us, can't she?
Yeah. She can either live in Devon or she can come up to Cambridgeshire.
Yes. Hang on a minute. I've just.
She'll be on soon. Varla will be on soon. You can see, like, in the background, Dan's been busy painting and making himself look like he's done it all, but it's not.
That is. I've just got a message from her. She thought it was in an hour.
I was.
That's fine. It's fine. But yeah,
She'll be on soon.
she'll be on soon. I've just sent her a message. No, it's now Varla.
Oh, bless her.
Obviously.
I've discovered this stuff. I brought it back from America when I went shopping with William, and it's this. It's grape, and it's sugar free, and you make it up with water. It's a sachet of powders, and you
Right.
make it up with water, and it is addictive. So, William, if you're watching, and I know that he is, can you get down to Fred Meyer's and buy me some more? Take it out of the plastic thing and just send me the sachets through the post, please. I love it. I love it.
I'm blaming Google for this mess up.
Blame Google, yeah.
I'm blaming Google. Coffee, please. Nice one.
I'm rather annoying. You might regret that. But no, you can't be as annoying as my children.
Or
Trust
me.
me.
Viv puts up with me. You can't be that bad.
I say my children. My children are. My youngest is 26, and my eldest is 34 this year. So yeah, I won't be as annoying as them. I think that's called. It's not wine. Honestly, it's grape juice. It's grape juice. Send me the name again. I'll take a picture of the thing and send it to you, William. Hi, William.
Hello, William. How are you?
Mr. Bradfield.
Mr. Gary Bradfield, as I live and breathe. How are you, sir?
That's my boyfriend.
Hope you're doing well.
He's my boyfriend.
He's a good lad.
Or me. What's all me about? What do they want? You're not having this. You're not having this. It's mine.
Oh, Jamie wants to move in with you. Jamie wants to move in with you. That's what it is.
No, he's not.
Oh, glad to hear that, Gary. Glad to hear you're all good, mate. Excellent news.
No, Chantel's moving in.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, you can't move in, Jay, because Chantel's moving in.
Yeah.
You're stuffed, mate, unfortunately.
But the only thing is, I haven't got enough land to put horses on. I've got a bit of land. You might get one on, but you'd have to exercise it somewhere else. Oh, dear. I've got hedgehogs in my garden.
You're not annoying, Gary.
No, he's not annoying.
Oh, you mentioned it the other day. They're noisy, aren't they?
Well, I think I had 3 of them all trying to mate each other. It was a bit... I did film it and I thought what was going on. It was a bit weird, but seeing the hedgehogs doing that right in front of me, and they were quite close. I mean, normally they'll run away, don't they? But these ones didn't. So they got a handful of mealworms. Porn,
isn't it?
It is like hedgehog porn.
Hi, Sarah. Hope you're well.
Hi, Sarah, honey.
Well, Sarah, I need to speak to you soon, Sarah.
Yes.
We need to speak to you very soon.
It's all right. You're not in trouble, Sarah.
No, not in trouble at all. Perish the thought. Perish the thought.
Oh dear.
But
so yeah, I had some paranormal stuff going on in my garden, which I thought was something weird going on in my garden, and it turned out it wasn't. It was hedgehogs.
Hi, Paul. Hedgehogs. Hedgehog pong, wasn't it?
Paul, do you want to come on a show? Let us interview you. You've been quite active and busy just lately.
Nah. Well, actually, I do believe that, Sarah.
I don't actually think it's Sarah. I think it's people around her.
Oh yeah,
it's just misunderstood. That's all it is, Sarah.
Sarah's all right. It's just the people. It's just other people. It's always other bloody people.
Yeah.
With all of us, it's always other people.
It definitely.
But
definitely. So, guys, let us know. Anybody wants to come on the show, please message us. Our diaries are filling up very quickly for this year. We have we
got 2 more booked in for the rest of the year.
2 more booked in today. I'm just waiting on somebody to come back to help us celebrate on our 2-year anniversary in June. Simply Spooky will be 2 years in June. Can you believe that?
Unbelievable. Well, I haven't been on it 2 years, have I? But but it's amazing that you've had it going for 2 years.
2 years.
I bet that's gone like a shot, hasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know where those 2 years have gone. But if anyone else wants to come on and host a show or do whatever they want to do, that's fine. Let us know. Message your page. We're always open. Well, we don't turn people away, not normally.
No.
Even the ones we don't like, we don't turn away. We're fair to everyone.
We like them all, really, don't we?
We do. We do. So we got a 2-year anniversary coming up in June. So that will be an interesting show. And I think we're going to try and get our very, very, very first guest. Bri, can you also message your page? We need to get you booked in to come on a show.
Never turn you away, William. William's family. We never turn William away.
No, but actually, William's been on it the whole 2 years and from the first day, I think, really. So, it's going to be a big celebration on June. I think it's June the 8th. We're going to do it online. So, I hope you can join us then. But we have lots of guests in the meantime coming on.
Yeah, so we've got quite a few coming on, haven't we? So that's something to look forward to.
Next week's guest is going to be...
hilarious.
William says, not me, surely not. No, William, we're going to keep you private.
Yes, you. Oh, no, William, you're great. William, there's nothing wrong with you, mate. You're great.
And thank you, William, for the invite. I can't wait.
Yes.
We're doing something private with Mr. Southey, so I'm looking
very
forward
excited
to
about
actually.
that, William. Yeah. Thank you ever so much for the invite. It's very kind of you.
What was we saying? I can't remember. Oh, yeah, we got some next week's guest. Oh, my God. Make sure you tune in for next week's guest. It's going to be so funny. And we also are going to be discussing something which is groundbreaking in the paranormal. I can't stress how groundbreaking it is. So to find out more, you're going to have to tune in next week. We can't do any more than that until next week till we got our guest.
No, that's we've really got to be guided by him, haven't we?
I'm booked in sometime after the 8th. Do you know what? You can come on any time you want and help us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
We need to get Gary back on.
We need to chat with Gary. We haven't chatted to Gary for a while, have we?
I know.
Nice to catch up with him and see how he's doing.
And Sharon as well.
And of course, Sharon, absolutely. Be good to chat to the pair of them.
There's lots. I mean, do you know, me and Dan, me and you have got so much coming up within the next 2 years. This year, next year, and the year after. And
we've just taken on a private, haven't we? Where I'm not going to say anything about it, but we just taken on a private as well. So we're throwing that into the mix.
Help with what? Oh, just help us invest. Simply Spooky and all sorts of things. We've got so much going on.
I'm looking forward to learning stuff.
I'm
always up to learn stuff. It's brilliant. I do need to pick my phone up, Jamie. You're absolutely right. I do need to pick my phone up. You are spot on. I was up a ladder today with trousers around my ankles because I've lost a bit of weight and they can't hold them. I've got braces and a roller in my hand. But yeah, you're right.
Right, I'm going to introduce Varla. Are you going to do?
Oh, excellent.
I'm going to add Varla to the stream.
Right.
Hi.
Hello, Varla. How are you?
Hi.
I'm good. Hello.
I'm sorry. I ended up in a Google mess.
Not entirely, not all you, because you had me convinced, and so I looked it up, and I came up with the same time as you, which was 3.
So it may have been Google then.
Yeah, it was Google's fault.
I blame Google.
Let's blame Google.
Yeah, let's. But I had this tiny little bad feeling in the back of my head, so I was out and I came home and I was like, I'm just gonna look at my messages just around 2 just to be safe. It's 2 my time, obviously.
Well, to be fair to you, you suggested to me yesterday that it was 2 o'clock. You said it was 2 o'clock. I'm like, I'll check it. No, it says 3 o'clock.
I was like, wow.
Is that 2 o'clock in the morning?
Mm-mm.
No, in the afternoon.
Afternoon. Yeah. No, that's afternoon light.
I was going to say.
Actually, 2 a.m. is kind of my sweet spot, so that would have worked too. But either way.
So Varla, thank you so
confusing.
much for coming on. We really appreciate this. I've been following you for a while. I've bought one of your books today, actually.
Oh, how exciting!
I know. I can't wait. It's going to arrive in tomorrow. I Amazoned it, so that's cool.
Nice.
So,
which one?
It's the Pukas.
Oh, Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings.
Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings.
Oh, good. You can let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm full of it or not.
Looking forward to reading it. I'm going to get the other one as well. There's another one. Loads of them, aren't there? They're brilliant. And you're working on another one now, aren't you?
I am working. Well, I've been working kind of simultaneously on 2, and actually, the one right now that I'm working on. So, Fairies, Pukas, and Changeling, kind of. Well, the way I see it, anyway. You'll have to tell me as a reader. But that book is kind of a collection of fairy and folklore from around the world, with a focus more on the British Isles, of course, because that's where the great deal of the, especially literature on fairies and folklore comes from. And one of my personal favorites anyway, just sort of always been drawn to that. So I kind of go through all of these different creatures, and I sort of look at the fairy. I mean, I kind of take that William Butler Yeats approach to the classification of the fairy kingdom.
Right.
I read his fairy stuff way too young, so I'm kind of scarred for life with some of that.
That's what got you. That's what got you, isn't it?
Yeah. Just, my mom didn't have a lot of qualms about, she never really held back with, especially when it came to books. Yeah, I had access to all kinds of books at a young age, from tarot reading to Crowley to, fairy and folklore. But the fairy book kind of takes a look at the fairy kingdom and the different kind of types of fairies. And it's both a collection of their stories in there. There's different old fairy tales in there. And then it kind of just, for me, there's some connections between, for example, water fairies or fairies that might be considered woodland versus, cavernous fairies or whatever, and or domestic fairies, which are always really interesting to talk about. And so I kind of just explain to an audience that probably doesn't understand that fairy doesn't necessarily mean one little tiny sweet creature that just lands on a flower, but it's this vast kingdom, and it's quite terrifying. And there's many layers to it. Pukas are among my favorites. They are sort of the trickster, and I like that they kind of tend to play on drunks a lot in the stories. It's like, so you kind of are always questioning the source. You have an unreliable narrator in all of those stories.
Wasn't Harvey the James Stewart rabbit a puka?
What's that?
I think wasn't the James Stewart, the film you made called Harvey?
Jimmy Stewart's. Harvey was the puka, and and actually that's in the book, because that was one of my first because he's just sitting there talking to this large pink rabbit, and everybody just thinks he's a drunk and kind of dismisses him. And he embarrasses his sister all the time, but he's just contented with his cocktail and his giant rabbit. So I love that. That's another element of the trickster, right? Like making you question yourself, or making people question you, and whether or not you're a sane person.
And I guess that's what the Fae Kingdom seems to be about, doesn't it? I mean, I'm getting they're not all tricksters, but a vast majority of them, it seems to be their culture that they are very tricky by the essence of what they are. Right.
And even like symbolically, how that kind of, why we need that, right? We kind of need that. I feel that very strongly with all kind of fairy and folklore and such. Is just that we really need that, the art of the story, to kind of make us pause and look at the world differently, and actually suspend our beliefs or our disbeliefs for a while. So, when someone's telling you a really good story, you get lost in that story. And for that period of time, nothing else matters. Time doesn't matter. I mean, maybe you're like itching your nose or whatever while you're listening, but mostly you're just thinking about this story, and could it happen? Could you're putting yourself there? What do these things look like? And I totally, I mean, honestly, I think that whether people completely invest in and completely believe that fairies exist, or they just allow themselves that suspension of disbelief, I have a very strong feeling that we have to have that in order to actually creatively think. And that's the only way we ever solve any problems. You know, you're not going to find a cure to a disease because you're sitting there looking at the same thing over and over again, doing the same thing. You got to suspend the thought that you have to just believe that there's something else you can do. There's some other kind of, you have to have that, suspension of doubt to invent things. Right. So that's where I think fairy tales in particular really belong in our culture, whether it's written, oral, true experience, or just something that's anecdotal. They all have a lot of value. And that to me is one of the biggest values, is that it actually changes I think it changes your brain, probably. If I was a sciencey person.
Nature spirits and fairies and everything have all been in our folklore through time. If you go right the way back, they've always been there. And through the ages, these stories have come through and everything. So my question to you is, Varla, do you think that these nature spirits, fairies, whatever you want to call them, whatever other people call them, that's fine. Do you believe that they've always been there? It's just that we today just don't see them because we're not looking for them.
I believe that, and I also believe we call them different things now. That's what I think happens. And actually the book that you were talking about, The Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings, that book really changed my perspective a lot. Prior to that, I had done a little bit of like diving into some of the fairy and folklore, just sort of beyond like what, is readily accessible. And I started that's actually what kind of got me to write that book, because I started kind of wondering, like, who's to say, now I'm not going to discount anyone's experience that they've had, but as I'm reading these stories and I'm reading about these poltergeists, and then I'm reading about these little hobgoblins that if you misbehave or if you don't help them clean or you don't leave them an offering, they pinch you or they scratch you in the night. And I'm thinking, boy, that sounds like a poltergeist.
Yeah.
And the lapse of time, right? And the idea of like when like alien abductions and people sort of like dropped off and wandering along some kind of dirt logging road or whatever. And that's falling asleep on the fairy mound right there.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna be the only person to stand up and say, hey, aliens are actually fairies. Like,
do you know what though? I agree with you. I think to myself, often, when you look at things like the cryptids and you look at things like Bigfoot and that, and how they can be there one minute and gone the next, and you think, well, is it interdimensional? And interdimensional is something maybe the Fae, they can do. Yeah. So does it mean, to me, these creatures, these cryptids, to me, people have asked me time and time again, what do you think they are? What do you think they come from? Do you think they're this? Do you think they're that? I'm erring on the side of that they're Fae.
I'm totally leaning that way myself, because they fit the criteria, right? They can disappear when they want, right? So they've got the magical cloak, right? Which the Manon MacLear gave the cloak, and hence the fog around the Isle of right. It's still called that, right? It's still referred to as like his cloak.
Yeah.
They've got that. So they've got that. They've got the ability to suspend and speed up and just sort of manipulate time.
Yes.
Because fairy time is different. Okay, so that fits.
Yes.
I mean, and then actually, if you go back, for example, indigenous stories in America, you have quite a few places. I grew up in Northern California. I now live in Minnesota. Both those places have, within the indigenous cultures, have stories that are very Bigfoot-like. There are creatures that are very, could, by today's standards, fit into a sort of a Bigfoot type category. And so then you start thinking, well, then they have always been here. I've heard many stories about little people in various regions in the United States, about little people that live in a certain area that, you know, the people native to that area are conscious of whether they'll, you know, go on that part of the mountain and things like that. So it's not just, you know, the kind of, I mean, these are stories that already existed before we even started asking about them,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, why not? Now, aliens, I've heard some pretty amazing theories over the years from you know, especially from people who are practicing magicians, in particular, like high magic, who believe that, you know, aliens had something to do with the pyramids and kind of like setting us up for that's what the ancient Egyptians were actually depicting. And, you know, you can see these things sometimes on like those shows late at night, the like, you know, ancient mysteries. You see some of these theories.
Yeah.
And again, like, I can't very well prove it one way or the other, right? So I can't very well discount somebody's theories. But you do have a lot of evidence of like what happens to people in the fairy kingdom, right? We have lots and lots and lots of people who are talking about that, and over the centuries. And then what we're talking about today and the experiences that people are having, I expect sharing with you guys, or that you've had, or I've had, that people share with me. Those are the kind of stories that I would just tell you around a campfire. But right now, this is our campfire, right? This like nice little computer box is our
exactly that
campfire. Yeah.
I mean, I believe in it fully. I believe in them fully. I completely buy into it. You know, I've had a couple of experiences. One was particularly. There's one I've never talked about, and I never.
Oh, Dan, tell Varla about that one on the way home in the car that you saw at the side of the road.
I was coming home from yours, Viv, wasn't it? We did an investigation. I was coming home in the early hours of the morning. It was about 3 a.m. And normally, I mean, we're paranormal investigators, so we're ghost hunters, really, by just what we are. And if I have an experience with what I believe to be a spirit, I get very edgy, and the hairs go on the back of my neck, but it's almost like I can't breathe. I get this. It's like somebody's taking my breath away, like jumping into a really cold bath, that type of thing. And we were coming back, or I was coming back one morning from Viv's after an investigation. And it's always in that betwixt time. It's always when your mind is at its most relaxed. And I saw this guy to the left, and he was in a bush. 3 o'clock in the morning. It was raining. Absolutely stark naked. But he was just crouched there and looking from the bushes in the countryside. Normally, if I'd have seen somebody who was like that and they were they were naked, it wouldn't affect me. It wouldn't, you know, I just wouldn't give it. I think, oh, somebody's out drunk or what have you. But there was something about this guy, and that came over me. The loss of breath, the hairs on the back of the neck. It was just, and I thought, yeah, this is something I get when there's something that is not quite right around, and that was one. But that's not. I mean, that's nothing. There was one. I did an investigation years ago. It was an old witch's wood where it was a lady who lived local, and she'd sort of looking at the 17th century, and she'd been ousted by the villagers, and she went to live outside of the area in a cave, and I was there with investigating, and with us we had a heritage witch. So it had been something that had been handed down from her family. She wasn't Wiccan; she was a heritage witch, and she was very proud of that, which she should be.
Oh yes, that. Going to be very specific. Exactly. I know exactly. Yeah.
You know exactly.
Important.
Exactly. And it got very, very dark in this woodland where we were. I mean, it got pitch darker than dark, and it was like somebody throwing which is something that happens with the paranormal anyway, isn't it? It was like somebody throwing a cloak over, and then you heard whispers.
Excuse me.
And then
you
heard little voices, and then you heard this, and then you heard that, and there were giggles and stuff like that.
Oh.
And I said to her, "What on earth is going on here?" And she no. She went, "That's absolutely fine." She went, "That's just the fae." She went, "That's just nature spirits." She went, "They're just coming in, they're interested and having a laugh, and you know they probably think we're idiots." That type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then I had one as a kid that I never speak of because of ridicule, and I will never speak of that because I've got no answer for it, and if I were to tell people what I'd seen, they would think I was a lunatic. So I never tell them.
I bet I wouldn't think you're a lunatic.
You probably wouldn't. I'll probably tell you after.
Yeah, you can tell after.
So when we come off
never tell anybody. I've never told a living soul. I never told my parents. I never told anybody. My parents were like, they came from Ireland, so they were very au fait with the fae, as it were. They believed in it. You know, this was part of the culture and the history, and they'd grown up with it, and they still believed. You know, well, they didn't believe. They knew. As far as they were concerned, it wasn't a case of believing. Yeah. It was a case of whether it's a fact. These elements or these beings are there, and that's it. But
Gary says something which is really lovely.
Oh, right.
He says, I prefer the theory that Loch Ness that the Loch Ness monster is a water fairy rather than a whales. So you know what? I'm sorry about being rude. So he loves the fact that, you know, you mentioned water fairies and he's attributing that to the Loch Ness.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Even things I believe that mermaids are a form of fae as well. You know,
yes. I got a whole book just on mermaids, actually.
Oh, have you?
Yes, I wrote a whole book just because they deserve their own. They just deserve their own book. I mean, they just do. Mermaids, and there are some other. I do talk a little bit about some other water fairies in there, and I think I managed to throw a few mermaids into the fairy book. But yeah, I mean, absolutely think that I consider mermaids, they are part of the fairy kingdom, and they're water spirits, and in particular in the sea, although there are lots of accounts of like lake spirits and lake-like mermaids. But yeah, I mean, and it's so interesting because anytime you have basically an island nation, right? So England, Ireland, the Caribbean, you got all kinds of increased mermaid, not only mermaids in terms of fairy and folklore, but mermaids in terms of importance in the culture. And in particular, in my book, I was lucky enough I had kind of put a call out because, you know, you were saying like some people think, you know, things are crazy. Well, guess what? If you admit that you believe in mermaids, people really think you're nuts. Like beyond, like you can say you believe in elementals and all kinds of things like that. But when you start talking about mermaids, people are kind of like, you mean that's just like pretend? But people love them, but not everyone wants to admit that they believe in them. But yeah, I mean, exactly. Here, what she says. Yeah. Mermaids are apparently actually very sinister and evil. That's kind of the whole premise of my book, is that they are not, you're thinking it's going to be this, you know, we have this retelling of the Little Mermaid where she's very cheerful and she's friends with everyone. And it's just that one sea witch who's kind of mean. That is a very, very brutal story. Again, I talked about being exposed to things really young. That is a story that stuck with me. She changes to be able to walk. She exchanges her fin for feet, and it's like she's walking on glass, like she's walking on daggers, I think is actually. So her feet are bleeding as she's walking on the beach. I mean, it's like a very brutal exchange there. But yeah, mermaids, with the idea that mermaids are both there to kind of guide, you know, they can be guides, they can be really helpful if they like you, and they can also be very tricky. They can cause storms. And one of the theories that I really came to, especially with mermaids, is that I believe that mermaids are psychopomps. So a psychopomp being something that helps guide someone from one world to the next. And their whole job, you know, you've heard time and time again about the mermaids keeping a graveyard of lost sailors, you know, even if they are the cause, they still are the psychopomps. And so they still are, in a way, that sort of gateway between one world and the next. But I blame
Disney for a lot of things,
Me too.
Because they make all these creatures sound warm and fluffy and weird and wonderful, but in actual fact, a lot of them that I've read in through history and from what I've seen and what I understand, fairy can be actually brutal and not nice.
Very unforgiving.
Mermaids, exactly the same, like you've just described, and even to these nature spirits, they're not all welcoming, because when you think about it, man, in its entirety, we are evil people. We're an evil species.
We're out to destroy things and conquer it and take it.
Yes.
We see something in the woods and we either want to stomp on it, shoot it, or take it for ourselves.
Exactly
instead of just hold reverence for it or accept that it doesn't belong to us. It's very difficult for us to understand the concept of not owning something, whether that's just in a photograph of it or having it. We're very greedy. We want
it's arrogance.
all the
it's
time.
An arrogance, isn't it? It's an arrogance. It's deep-seated in us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my mom has worked with fairy spirits for many years, and she had this great thing happen finally after like years and years. I mean, we're talking like I was one of those kids, I said before, my mother's bookshelf is responsible for a great deal of who I am. I was an early reader, and we had the magic of Findhorn up there. We had lots of tarot, Dion Fortune, quite a bit of Dion Fortune, things I didn't fully understand, astrology. My mom did our birth charts before she wrote in our baby weights. That was just how it kind of rolled. So I guess that's the hereditary part there. But I forgot where I was. Oh yeah. So she's got this kind of area in her garden that she's dedicated to fairies. And so my mom has gone through all of the different, she was a priestess of Isis. She's done a lot of different, magical like explorations, and worked with different magical groups. And, but anyway, so she really got into, about, I'd say 10 or 15 years ago, she'd always believed in fairies. And she told us when we were kids, we lived in this very rural area, and she would tell us, don't, that's a fairy mound. Don't step on that. Don't sleep on that. Don't mess with that.
Yeah.
And like, we didn't, we didn't, we were like, we don't want to be swept away into some world where if we eat something, we're trapped forever, like, of course, as a kid, you're like, nope, I won't go in that mine shaft. No worries. So she had been like ritualistically dedicating an area of her garden to fairy. She had a fairy well there. She would do visualizations. She was just like really, really, not, it wasn't like she was like out there but she would just always acknowledge them, always leave something for them. And her garden looked beautiful. And then one day, it was early spring. I think this was about 2 years ago. It was a full moon, and her garden had been planted. And she did some kind of, I'm not sure exactly what in the garden type ritual, but she just called me and she said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm telling you, everything grew overnight. By the light of the full moon, everything grew overnight. And I was like, that's amazing, Mom. And I'm thinking like, well, maybe even me, I'm like, maybe she just like is exaggerating a little, or like she didn't notice something was so big. And like, things had bloomed. Her tomatoes had gotten huge, really. And so then my sister, who's lives right by her and is definitely much more like, she would not tell me this if it didn't happen. She said, yeah, it's really weird. Actually, I saw her garden the day before and I saw it the day after. And I don't know what Mom did, but her garden is huge.
Bloomed overnight.
It's like doubled in size, like everything doubled in size and was blooming. And so interestingly, she had like sort of a fairy kind of Reiki session with a person who works with the elementals. And he said usually like one or two comes through, and for her, they all came, and they did exactly how you described. They just were peeking. They just were curious. They wanted to see what was going on, but there was no, he said even the dark fairies came through, and I was like, yes, Mom, thank you. Protected for life.
Chantel's got a question. Do you want to read it, Dan?
Although I believe these are sirens luring sailors, etc., in by changing into what they would see as a beautiful mermaid or a thing of desire, then eat them. Yeah, that's
or poke it with a stick.
With a stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that right. Catch the big fish. And mermaids are so fun because you have like just everything from, I mean, you know, like they're pirates. There were a lot of pirates that were very afraid. Blackbeard was afraid of mermaid infested waters. And there were places like, especially in Florida, where they would, you know, and as you went down into like the Keys and such, there's all kinds of areas where there's also manatees there.
Yeah.
And one thing that manatees like is shallow water because they like it warm. So whether you think there's actually mermaids there and all your sailors are going to jump over the ship and just like go for it because they're, you know, they've been desperate and alone on a ship for 3 months with a bunch of stinky men, you know, like whatever you think is going to happen. But in reality, if you have an area that's infested or populated with manatees, you're going to run aground. Yeah. So there's practicalities there too, right? So you know, there's the smoke and mirrors aspect of it as well. But then I'm one of those people that goes, but even if there's smoke and mirrors, there's always something behind that. There's some kind of seed.
There's always a grain of truth, isn't there, to all of this?
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing, isn't it?
William's just come up with something. Do you want to read that, Dan?
Yeah, no problem. I've had experiences with a variety of fae and know they exist. But I think that most of the stories of old have to do with keeping kids away from places and activities that are harmful, as well as explain things they don't understand. Yeah, like the smugglers used to use stories and like that, ghost stories.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah, if I've got something I don't want you to touch. Well, these days, if I tell you it's haunted, you're more likely to come to it, right? Exactly. More likely to fill your in. No, I think that's absolutely true. There's always an element of that, like, especially, I always think of like the bog creatures, like the Jenny Green Teeth and the things that are out in like the swamp and stuff. Like, you don't want your kids going in the swamp. You know, you don't want your kids running in the bog where it looks like one thing and then it becomes another. And then also, I think the stories would change as people immigrated or moved around as well, because it was a way to, you really didn't know what was going on. So it was a way to kind of keep the kids from like, I mean, you don't want to get in that swift river. There's a sea monster in there, or there's a siren or the Lorelei that's in the River Rhine, right? You know, like, you also, it goes real fast and it looks really calm and nice and it'll sweep you away in no time. So there's always that element of, again, that's a practicality, right? Like keeping the kids close to the heart. I mean, we do that with our own children, right? It's like, well, Santa's not gonna bring you anything.
There is a sinister side, though. There is a sinister side where this comes from Ireland, where the children were being stolen by the fae from their cots.
Changelings.
Yeah, and it was only they didn't like iron or something. Is it iron?
Yes, it's iron. Yes, iron repels them. Oh, I got in a lot of trouble one time for being on a national radio show. I won't tell you the name of it, but it rhymes with ghost, to ghost. And I was on there one time, and the host was just asking me about changelings. That the book had just come out, and he asked me about changelings. And he was just like, "But what do you do? Like, what's the cure? How do you do it?" And one of the things that you do to keep fairies out, like when you have a baby, is you lock every single lock and you close every single door and you seal everything, which I think also has the added benefit of sort of, removing a lot of potential germs and such from the air.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of hermetically sealing everything. But they said, well, how do you do it? And I was like, okay, so this was actually, I think I read it directly from, I think it might be directly from a Yeats, but it might be Lady Wilde. But anyway, it was basically you get some water boiling on the stove and you sort of make the threat that you're going to pour this water onto the changeling. And boy, did I got in some hot water for that, because because I guess they said, if you just come on and you're just listening halfway, you just hear this person saying, "Oh, if you think you have a changeling in your house, pour hot water on them."
Yeah, I can see how
right.
That would be
okay, so and American audience. Okay, so you got to dumb it down quite a bit there. So.
For all audiences, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, but yes, changelings are to me that is one of the scariest. Whenever anyone asks me like, what do you think is scary? I think banshees are pretty scary, and I think changelings are pretty scary.
Yes.
And
the thing about the changeling thing, there was a story, as recent as I think it was the sort of early 20th century. There was a case in Ireland, wasn't there, where the girl they murdered the woman.
Okay, so that's the thing is you also, when you're looking at some of those stories, it's you have to also and I definitely realize this. Well, there's multiple things happening, right? First of all, you're looking at a lot of times if you're looking at something that was written in the 17th, 18th, or 19th century, you have a very specific viewpoint.
Yeah.
And the people who were able to read and write and record were people typically that were a certain class of society. They probably had some kind of affiliation with the church. Like a lot of the gathering of material were like reverends and things who were able to actually go to, convert the heathens, and then they would collect these stories, but it would always be put down with some sort of like Christian moral would get worked in there, right?
Yes.
So that's like a big majority of the literature that you have. So you're looking at that. And so when you're reading these things, you always kind of have to take into account, like I always like to do a little research of who is this person that wrote this account. And actually, my favorite collection of fairy lore is by William Wirt Sykes, and he was a consulate. He was like the consulate I believe he was born in New York, but he was sent to Wales as a consulate, and he became. And this was about early 1800s. I want to say he wrote this book in like 1835 or so. And he was very fascinated with the old ways and the way that things were, especially in rural parts of Wales. One of his jobs was to go around and like talk to people and meet people. And so he began recording stories, and there's this book, and you can find it. It's real intense. You can find it on, like, if you have access to Gutenberg, which is an online archive of books that are in the public domain that have been scanned.
Well, as in like the Gutenberg press, that type of...
Yeah. It's called Gutenberg.org after that. Yeah. And so it's the Gutenberg Library. And anyway, you can find this this book. It's called British Goblins, and it's by William Wirt Sykes, and it's very thick. And I would love to have actually a physical copy of that one day. But it is, there's drawings in there, and there's stories about funeral customs, sponge cakes at funerals. That's one of my favorite sections. The occult power of goats. I mean, it's just like, it's just the most amazing book. It's the most amazing book. I've drawn on it for sources for years because it's thick language, and then he also includes a lot of the Welsh words. So there's layers there that you have to unpeel, trying to understand exactly what he's talking about in some cases. But it's like, everything will-o'-the-wisps, and it's one of the best collections of regionally specific folklore that I've seen, especially written by someone who was there as a visitor. But he kind of pulled a William Butler Yeats thing where he went around and started interviewing people. I mean, it'd be like, I'm sure when you guys go on vacation, you start asking people for their ghost stories, right? It just happens. So I sidle up to someone at a bar in Key West and say, so have you ever seen a mermaid? I mean, that's just, I try and drop it in whenever I can,
You get many of them that go, yes, I have. Or do you think that they'd be reluctant?
Okay, so I was going to say earlier, I actually got 2 or 3 people who told me their mermaid stories. And it was really, like I had said, if you think people think you're nuts for like having some kind of encounter, no one wants to tell you their mermaid stories unless they start hearing other people have had them, and then they'll share a little bit more. So over the years since I published that book, people will tell me stories, especially people who like fishermen or people who just like live on boats and, you know, are out at sea a lot more, they have more stories. But one person in particular had an encounter where this sort of like merman like creature appeared over her, like she was in like I can't remember what island she was at in the Caribbean, but she was in one of those little like huts out over the water, out over the ocean. And she woke up in the night, and it's actually, her story is just like a ghost story. She woke up in the night, she saw something shimmering at the foot of her bed, but it wasn't a specter. It was this like red-haired, half man, half fish thing. And then she sort of fell back asleep. And when she woke up, there was a puddle of water in the hotel room.
Wow.
I know. And she even sent me a picture, which I couldn't include in the book, but she sent me a drawing of what it looked like. And it was totally had like giant alien eyes and stuff. And it was, I feel like she couldn't tell very many people that story. Like not very many people believed her. But when she told, I mean, I believed her, and it reminded me very much of, you know, other stories people have told me or experiences I've had where you can't quite tell what's going on, and it all happens so quickly, but you know what you saw.
Yeah.
We have a it's a very well respected organization here called the RNLI, and they're our lifeboat people that go out and help people in distress and pluck them out of the sea and save their lives, basically. And I think it's on YouTube. They managed to get hold of some film that the RNLI took. It was one of their training expeditions. They went out on their dinghy, like with all the alarm bells ringing as if somebody was drowning at sea. So they were recording it for their own purposes, and they actually caught on camera mermaids, and you see it actually fly over. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't nice to look at. It looked quite hideous, but they actually filmed it. And when I saw that, I thought the RNLI would not lie about something like that, or even
because everyone would laugh at them, right? So why would they put that out there?
Yeah.
Oh, and that whole like the ability to sort of shapeshift or change appearances, which you see in a lot of with mermaids, you see that they're beautiful 1 minute, and then, you know, the next thing you know, they turn into this hideous beast that's latched onto you. Yeah. Or the banshee appearing like a lovely young woman or a helpless old lady walking down the road, and then it turns and it lets out this horrifying scream, and it's just like
Sarah's put something up, Dan. Do you want to read that out?
Yeah, of course. So Sarah says, years ago, after losing my partner, I had issues in my house. A very, very dear friend who's a Canadian Cherokee told me I had a sprite in my home and helped me to quieten things down. I actually felt as it scrambled up me in bed early hours one morning and lumped down on my chest, as well as other things. Felt like a very small child. I can imagine you would, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think I think that like I personally have had quite a few paranormal experiences. I've always considered that some kind of entity or ghost, but I had a very, very playful ghost in one place I lived in that I thought might be a child. But I have also had a few things that fall a little bit more on the lines of like a creature or a cat, or like not quite sure what it is. And that usually coincides with missing items. I heard a really great idea recently to like not just make like an offering, like, you know, nice bread and cake and wine or something, but actually someone was making like jewelry or some kind of like shiny little beautiful object to leave, and they were leaving it in exchange for their missing like earring, you know, rings, things like that. Because I don't know about you, but I have about 20 single earrings with no idea what's happened to the other
one.
And I take them and put them off in the same place most of the time. So you know, it's like, oh, okay, that just disappeared. I must have fallen asleep and taken, you know, you kind of, but once you have 20, you're like, okay, either I am completely not paying attention, which is possible, or something is snatching them. And the house that I live in now, I was working on that Fairy Puka Changeling manuscript, and an entire chapter got snatched. So I'm kind of thinking that I just kind of try and keep nice even keel, but I've never deliberately made a shiny gift like that. So that's probably I should try it and see if I get it.
You see, now this is what I think, Varla. I sit there sometimes when I'm doing investigations, and I think to myself, how do we know that these aren't elementals? How do we know that these aren't the Fae that are in here, that they're dealing with us? Because obviously you've got a house Fae, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
And it does make me wonder. Sometimes I question. I think, am I dealing with a human spirit, or am I dealing with a nature spirit? Am I dealing with a member of the Fae?
Yeah, because I've even had people do like a remote viewing of my house and tell me there's no, like, I knew there weren't any ghosts in this house as soon as I walked in, but there's something in this house, and it's a strange house. I've never lived in a house like this before, but half the house is under the ground. So there's your...
So I don't know what that was. It was outside.
You don't know what that was? Oh, really?
The Fae trying to get in with.
That was outside. It's like, what was that?
Dear.
Okay,
well, lock your door.
Must be a car or something going past.
Get your cakes and wine ready.
It's the hedgehogs in the garden again.
It's crazy though, isn't it? If I go to the woods and I take something from the woods, like a piece of wood, and I'll always take wood, like fallen wood or what have you, for whatever reason, I'll always leave something.
Oh, that's really nice.
And sometimes I've even sort of pulled bits of like my hair out and put that down.
You're like, okay, that's all I got.
Yeah, that's all I had on me at the time.
I got some coins, and I got some
coins. I've got this, I've got that. I'll have some of my hair. That's why I've not got a lot left.
Yeah, but all those trips to the woods.
That's why they think that they've got Bigfoot hair, and it's really yours, Dan.
It's my hair. Yeah, it's my hair. Absolutely. But there are a lot, but that's the little things that I think, obviously from my family and my mum and dad, and I think those are the type of things that you do. It's a respect, isn't it? It's a trade. It's a thank you, and it's also not wanting to get bitten in the bum when you go home and you've not sort of acknowledged them.
Maybe that's where the term hedging your bets came from. You hedge your bets, right?
Yes.
You're just like making sure you're going to be okay either way. Well, maybe you're actually like leaving a little something literally in the hedge, right?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But it's the little things, isn't it? I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff that we do today that still harks back to those bygone times when we dealt with those elementals and things,
William's come up with something. And the question is, how would the Fae react to some kind of ghost or entity in your home? I mean, would the Fae not like that? Do you think that there would be a conflict or a fight for that?
I feel like you could, if you had a good relationship with the Fae, you could probably call on them to protect you.
Yeah.
But I've certainly heard of ghosts duking it out, For example, a ghost that was like almost more like a familiar that followed this one woman. Our theory was that it followed her from childhood, because similar things would happen in completely different locations, and other things would happen that we thought were location specific. And then in one location, a lot of stuff started happening, and it almost felt like battle-y somehow. Like one thing was reacting to the other thing and escalating it. So I don't see why. I mean, in some belief systems, the other side is the same thing, whether it's full of ghosts or fairies. Now, people don't always cross over into the Fae. They have other options, right? Depending on what you believe and who you were as a person living. But in some belief systems, and many belief systems, that other world accompanies it. And you see that actually even in Celtic, the underworld, the other world, is full of vampires and ghosts and werewolves and all the creatures of the Fae. And one of the ways that you go to meet them is to go underground into some kind of cave, right?
Yeah.
So that's a way to kind of connect and kind of go into that journey. But you definitely can call upon the Fae to help you. And I think it's probably for people who are inexperienced. I think calling upon like a helpful fairy or Fae entity is probably a little safer than messing around with ancestors or ghosts if you don't know enough about ancestral magic. Because you're probably gonna, you might get a greedy fairy or something, but you're not necessarily gonna get something that will, follow your children around at night. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So Dan, Sarah says, I'm glad I've tuned in tonight now as more confirmation we are not suffering from psychosis.
No,
so
you're not.
No, perfectly normal. It's all normal. It is.
Hi,
They're
Mark.
the abnormal ones out there saying we're not normal.
Exactly.
Well, I know where I'm going when it's my time to pass. I'm going to go and live with the Bigfoots.
Oh, nice.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
I thought you were going to say you were going to hunt Dan.
Well, yes. Well, I am going to do some things to him.
I'm completely unobservant, so I wouldn't know if people were haunting me or not, to be honest.
He's going to know. He's going to know. I'm going to slap him.
You're going to flick him on the forehead.
No,
I've been flicked on the forehead before, and I think now that I think about it, I think it was probably my grandma, because who else is going to twack you on your forehead,
Yeah.
I'm going to put scratches, upside down crosses on him, so he's really going to freak out. So you want a scratch? Here's an upside down cross. Hi, Dan. Viv was here or something like that.
Yeah. How about a V? Put a V. It's the best letter, and it's easy.
But that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Do you have a website or anything like that?
I do. Yeah, thank you.
Let me put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's varlaventura.net. So it's not .com, it's .net. Don't know what happens if you go to .com. I lost that domain, and then I got one of those messages. Hey, you want to buy this domain back for $6,000? It was like, the day I make $6,000 in royalties, I'd happily buy that back.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'll go with .net. So it's varlaventura.net. That's my website. I actually have I have information about my books up there. I've got a little store with funny little things. Like I made a baby onesie that says changeling on it for little babies. I know, so cute, right? And I got a nice a vampire ball cap that says all nighter on it. So just some fun things. Whenever I think of a good pun, I turn it into an item.
We need a onesie for Dan that says change.
It'd be a 40s, I should think, to fit me.
Actually, they do have adult onesies on there. I could see if we can make one in your size.
Varla, thank you so. It's been an absolute pleasure this evening and a joy.
Yes.
And I've learned a lot from it. And thank you so much for this. It's very kind of you to acquiesce to come on here. And
will you come back? Will you come back?
I'd love to. I'd love to come back.
Please,
absolutely.
We'd love to get you back on the go.
That would be great. Yeah, and I'm so sorry about that time mix-up and being a bit late.
It was my fault. It was half me, half Google. But let's go 3, 3, and 3. Okay, some of it was me too. You're fine. You told me the right time initially, and I questioned it.
I listened to you, so that's on me.
I'll tell you what. There's a lesson there for everybody.
Don't listen
to anything I say.
Just check with Viv.
Check with Viv first. You don't
Varla,
listen to me.
I'll sort it out next time.
Well, now we know. Now we know what the time difference is, no matter what. I think it just doesn't change. So there we go. We're 5 hours.
Any questions in future, my answer will be refer you to Viv.
Yeah. Don't check Google.
Varla,
it was my pleasure. This went so quickly, and I really I love talking with you guys. So I'd love to come back.
Absolutely brilliant. We'll definitely get you back on, Varla, without a shadow of a doubt.
Stay where you are, Varla. Don't go anywhere, because I think Dan wants to talk to you privately after.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I'll send you a message.
Okay. Either way, it's fine. Yeah.
Thanks again, Varla.
Take care, everyone, and we will
see
you all next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.